It's just you and me today. Two people. My name's David Woodall. I'm a United Church minister with the Emsdale Pastoral Charge. You and me. Two men. Timothy and Epaphroditus. They could have been Bill and John. They could have been Sharon and Martha. Two people who found hope and life in the mission of Christ. We were created to serve in mission. And this means loving and caring for others, helping strangers, standing on the side of the oppressed, sharing water and food, helping people to live forward in whole and healthy ways. We are invited by God to participate in this mission. We find life's deepest meaning when we serve each other in love and kindness and caring. Two people. Paul writes, "Dear friends at Philippi, I can trust these people. Thank you for sending Epaphroditus. We love the same way. We are on the same team. Timothy and Epaphroditus, they will share the love that I would love to share with you if I could be with you. I hope that I will be able to send Timothy to you soon. He shares my feeling and really cares about you." Two of Paul's companions, Timothy and Epaphroditus. Timothy, who came to know Christ through Paul's ministry when he was just a teenager. Epaphroditus sent to Paul with a gift from the Philippian church. It's quite possible that Epaphroditus delivered this particular letter, which we call the Philippians, to the church after Paul had written it. Two of Paul's companions, Timothy. The early part of his life was spent working with Paul. Timothy was one of the people Paul relied on when he wished for information or to send advice, encouragement, or rebuke, and he couldn't go himself. Timothy went. Tradition has it that Timothy was left by Paul as the minister at Ephesus. The occasion of the beginning of Timothy's ministry at Ephesus may be the reason behind the writing of the letters of 1st and 2nd Timothy, which we have in our Bible today. In later years, Timothy may have become the bishop of Ephesus. Epaphroditus? We don't know much about him. He was delegated by the Philippian church to go to Paul to provide for him what they could not provide because of their distance from him. He was the bearer of their gift, and it was also intended that he stay and be Paul's personal servant. So he obviously was a courageous person, because when you associate with a man awaiting trial on the grounds of treason, you stand the likelihood of being painted by the same brush. They were dependable and reliable people. Dependability, reliability, these things grow out of a healthy self-esteem. And this is admired by everybody, really. A good sense of self-esteem grows out of our dependability and reliability, and our dependability and reliability grows out of a good sense of self-esteem. God invites us to think well of ourselves because God certainly thinks well of us, so much so that God's whole relationship with the human race has its interactions through people like you and I. Christ relies on us. Clark MacDonald, former moderator of the United Church, calls this the vulnerability of God. When it came to humans, God chose to create us differently from the rest of the created order. In effect, part of God lies within each one of us. The dream that God has for this world of justice and peace, a world where the hungry are fed, where each of us cares for the other, and where we can have that close relationship with God, there is one essential ingredient, and that's you and I. And this makes God vulnerable. The vulnerability of God is part of the vulnerability of God. This part of God, found inside of us, is what makes our lives so sacred. And this is why our decisions about good and evil and right and wrong are so important. The possibilities of what God could have done at creation are limitless. God could have created us as robots, dancing on the end of some divine string. The decision to leave us free to choose good and evil has left God wide open to our attacks. And this freedom, this ability to choose between right and wrong, is part of what God has chosen to share with us. And in that sense, then, that which gives to life its greatest meaning, which is our freedom to choose, is that which also causes life to be sacred. That's why the suppression of freedoms around the world is a suppression of the divine in each one of us. When you give of yourself to someone else, you become vulnerable to that person, because that person now knows you a little more fully than others do. Part of God has been created within us, and that makes us sacred people. We can create or destroy. We can give life or we can take it away. We can choose evil or we can choose good. I heard a story about a 14-year-old boy being hung in a Nazi concentration camp, and all the inmates were forced to watch. Eli Wiesel, who told the story, said, "Behind me I heard the man asking, 'Where is God now?'" I heard a story about children who mysteriously died and were buried in unmarked graves surrounding a residential school in Canada, of all places. And I heard the question, where is God now? I watched a man of color die under the knee of a white police officer, and I heard the question, where is God now? And I could go on. Eli Wiesel in that concentration camp answered the man asking, "Where is God now?" He said, "I heard a voice within me answer him, 'Where is he? Here he is. He's hanging here on this gallows with this 14-year-old boy.' Where is God now? In the Truth and Reconciliation report that is challenging us and pushing us forward into new ways. Where is God now? In the resolve which voices the truth that Black Lives Matter, or on the back of a wheelchair driven around Huntsville which says all lives matter. Is God here in this mess that we live in? Yes, 1,000 times yes. With the child on the gallows, in the unmarked grave, beneath the knee, yes, 1,000 times yes. God took the risk of being vulnerable by putting all God had on the table, invested in us, believing that love would win the day. We can create or we can destroy. We can give life or we can take it away. We can choose evil or we can choose good. We are God's great gamble. And the gamble is that we have the ability to discover the depth and the richness and the meaning of life. That we have the ability to discover the sacredness of life. We are the Timothy and Epaphroditus of this age. We are the ones who seek truth. We are the ones who stay the course. In the days of the early church, AD 252, plague broke out in Carthage. The population of that town threw the bodies of the dead out the door, and they fled in terror. Cyprian, the Christian bishop, gathered his congregation, persuaded them to stay, and he set them to burying the dead in the city and nursing the sick in that plague-stricken city. And in doing so, at the risk of their own lives, they saved the city. Today we have frontline workers who've done the same thing for us, and they've saved us. God chose to create us differently from the rest of the created order. In effect, part of God lies within each one of us. The dream that God has for a world of justice and peace, a world where the hungry are fed, where each of us cares for the other, where we can have that close relationship with God, it has one essential ingredient, you and I, part of God, has been created within us. And that makes us sacred people. We can create or we can destroy. We can give life or we can take it away. We can choose evil or we can choose good. They could have been Bill and John. They could have been Sharon and Martha. They were people who found hope and life in the mission of Christ. We were created to serve in mission. That means loving and caring for others, helping strangers, standing on the side of the oppressed, sharing food and water, and helping people to live forward in whole and healthy ways. We are invited by God to participate in this mission. We find life's deepest meaning when we serve each other in love and kindness and caring. Two people, that's all it takes. You and I. Have a great week.